All right, well, good afternoon. This is a lunch session, so I know a lot of you are balancing food on your laps. There are some tables up at the front if you didn't notice. You can come on up and join us. We'll keep this pretty informal for the lunch session. I know this is probably your 700th talk in the last 2 days on AI, so we'll try to keep it a little varied and a little bit different too. My name is Ronnie Burt. That is my WordPress website that has links to some of my socials and some more information about what I do and what I've done. And I work for a company called Automattic. Automattic is known for WordPress.com, for WooCommerce, for Jetpack, for Tumblr, and a whole bunch of other brands. And we really focus at our core on open source community. Of course, WordPress is a large open source project in and of itself. And so I focus on our AI teams on WordPress.com, on the product side, about how we can integrate AI in a useful way for our customers so that they can be more successful in achieving their goals. And this talk is a little bit different than the type of talk that I normally would give. I usually tried to listen to my high school speech teachers. You know, we should have an arc with a story that connects nicely. But the thing about AI and where we are right now, or at least where I personally am, is the more I learn, the more I think I know, the less I realize I know. And I hope that a lot of you can come and join me in that space about figuring out what it is that we want to see with AI, how it's going to shape the web and the websites that people are building, and all of the different tools around it. So the first question I want to start with is, are there even websites in the future? And to be honest, I've been building websites in one way or another since the mid to late 90s. This is not a question that I thought I would be asking anytime soon. I've always been a huge evangelist for every small business, every dentist, every restaurant, every student in school, every person looking for a job, every nonprofit. We all need websites under our own domains, that we can control, that we can move the content with us, and not be part of some proprietary platform. But there are some obvious things changing that we need to pay pretty close attention to. And one of the things that I've been playing a lot with lately are these new evolutions of web browsers, right? And this is a screenshot of Dia. Dia is from the browser company, recently acquired by Atlassian. Inside Dia is the homepage of Comet. Comet is another browser by Perplexity. There's also Chrome itself, embedding Gemini features inside of Chrome more and more every single day. And I've been spending a lot of time how can we use this new paradigm as we browse websites? And to be honest, I haven't found personally a solution that has really been a game changer, that's really changed the way that I interact with the web day to day. But I do see a seed there, something that is beginning to take place where we can just find what we're looking for faster, do what we're trying to achieve faster. And just a note, since we're here at All Things Open, all three of these are powered by the open source Chromium platform, which is just pretty cool in and of itself. But as I'm using these tools, one thing that really stood out to me in the Dia browser is that when you click on the new tab link, forever in browsers, we've been used to the next step, put in a web address, put in a URL, a domain, a link. That's not the case in Dia. There's not even a place to put my link. What do I do? Where do I go? It wants you to ask a question. And then it asks, it does the search for you. And so the way I'm thinking about it is that forever and ever, if you were like me, you search in Google, you would right-click and open up 10 tabs of the first 10 results, and then you would go through them each one by one, hoping you find what you're looking for. And then if you remember, you'll close all those tabs when you're done. Well, that's what the AI is doing for you in these browsers, is it's doing that same search. It's opening up those 10 pages. It's going through them all, and it's trying to find what you're looking for. Then it spits out a summarized result. This is changing the way people are getting to our websites, the top of the funnel, the way that we get people to the information that we're trying to get them to. And what that means, bye-bye SEO after all this time. Is SEO really changing? Or is SEO something different? What I'm seeing is there's definitely, in almost every website that I kind of have access to, a decline in most traffic from Google directly. The good news is there's an increase in traffic from the LLMs, from ChatGPT, from Claude, if sites are lucky to have that. And there's a whole new alphabet soup going on and a fight with, is this AEO, GEO, AIO? I don't know. I don't think it's worth really diving into all of these acronyms, but there are some subtle differences. But there are trends in all of these approaches, and it's basically the way that SEO is changing. So the same things that have worked in SEO in the past, building authority, linking out to your sources or citing your sources, those are still great. That's still working with the LLMs. And for whatever reason, they love a good comparison. So you're seeing a lot more comparisons being written against products or whatever, because that's how people are asking that question. Please compare for me these 4 hotels or these 4 apps that do whatever it is I'm trying to do. But what's different is the content itself, or what we're seeing is what people are building differently for their websites. Content's becoming a little clearer, a little more tied to schemas, schema.org, or just some sort of predictable pattern in the content that's being created. And that's leading us to a real change in the way people are creating, editing, maintaining, building websites, and the purpose that that website has. So for this little next phase of the presentation, these are just my personal, kind of what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling, what I'm hoping may happen. But I'm hoping that there's more and more power in the most recent content, that the LLMs are not their source training data, but the ones that include search or pulling the most recent content. There's more and more of a need for our content to be unique. Have your own perspective, have your own human voice in what it is that you're sharing. And this I'm kind of excited about is more websites that are more niche, more on a specific topic, more local to the community that you're in or the type of niche field that you're looking for. And if we're really lucky, this means way less bloat on websites and all of the SEO practices that have become so prevalent. Right? We all know you're looking for a recipe and you have to scroll and scroll and scroll to finally find the recipe at the bottom. Why? Because SEOs have decided this is a good way to game the system to pack in a whole bunch of keywords and interesting information at the top so that they get the search traffic. But the LLMs, they're just looking for that recipe. So we're going to see recipes at the top so that the LLMs find them faster. And we'll see the recipes using the recipe schema for exactly how all the ingredients are listed and all of this. The other practice that we see a lot is content marketing, and you'll write 4, 5, 6 blog posts. All are basically the same with a slightly different keyword approach. And that's just not good for anyone, really, right? What I'm hoping is that the focus will be on the source of truth on your website for that topic. And that's really well structured and really easy for humans to read, but also for the LLMs to find what they're looking for. This one's a little interesting and something I think we have to look forward to. You're seeing Apple Intelligence on the phone. We're seeing Google experiment with more local LLMs that can be ran in the browser. And I don't think it's very far-fetched to think that a lot of what now is currently being sent off to OpenAI or sent off to Gemini to be more local and on the edge. Again, if we're lucky, this means a great step forward for privacy, because instead of the cookie tracking that we do now on all the websites to know who that person is and all the sites that they're visiting, we'll be able to make inferences send those inferences through the local LLMs, and you won't be able to identify a specific person with that information. Other thing I hope we're seeing as we build the next version of the web is authenticity. And this is where I really think the open source community can have the most influence, because it's going to need to be some open standard. I've been looking and I haven't been finding anything that I think we're going to gravitate towards anytime in the really near future, but there are lots of people thinking about this. And this goes back to the idea of building authority on the website, that you know that it's not just a bunch of LLM-created content, that the person that wrote the content is standing behind it and really validating what it is there. By the way, I was a middle school and high school math teacher for a long time right out of college. I'm super used to being interrupted and heckled or whatever, so this can be informal. It's a large room, but just shout out questions or something, and I'm gonna try to get you a little more involved here in a minute. And then just an aspirational thing, that as LLMs and just generative AI is creating more, maybe we will get more local, more niche, more human connections, maybe in person, and a lot of this content overload. There's just a lot of digital waste being created, basically. We'll just find less value in over time. So all this leads to kind of a phrase that I've kind of adopted. It's a little cheesy, but less hype, more impact. How do we get less hype from all the AI stuff and more impact both within our businesses, within our products, for our end users, and the problems that they're trying to solve? And so I want to play a little game. I've got a bunch of little just topics on the AI topic. And as I go to that slide, I want to see if you can just, off the top of your head, your gut reaction, is it hype or is there real impact here? And just kind of yell out what you're thinking. I kind of want to feel out what the crowd is thinking here. So we're going to try it. I'm going to flip the slide. I'm going to put up a word, and then you just have to kind of yell hype or impact. I think what I heard the most was impact. Right now, I'm living in hype for MCP. We've built it for our products. We've made connectors. I'm playing with a bunch. There are a few that I find some real impact with. We do all of our product management in Linear. Linear has a really great MCP that is useful. But MCP is just a connector for existing APIs in almost every case. The same interaction could have been handled another way, maybe a more efficient way. And I'm just not sold yet that our average user outside of the developer space is really here. There's just too many unknowns around security, around authentication, around giving it permissions to write, and all of these things. So if this kind of surprises you or offends you, we can talk about it a little bit more later. Next word. Content creation, and is AI having an impact on this, or is this hype? I'm gonna believe that humans are gonna figure out how to get past all of the fake created content that's out there, and that we're gonna, through authenticity, through just uniqueness, you can read when something is created by AI and know pretty much right now that it's created by AI. And I have some thoughts on the next iteration of content creation that I'll get to later that will have, I believe, more impact, but in and of its own, just asking ChatGPT to create a blog post, publishing that blog post. Some people are getting some traffic and some success with that right now, but long term, I think that's all hype. AI's taking our jobs? Ooh, a lot of hype. I agree. I think it's mostly hype. There's so much. This is also creating so many more jobs, right? And so many more opportunities. And the thing that I think it's doing with most jobs, especially in the tech space, is that I am a pretty terrible developer, but I've been, hacking away, the people that you hate that say they're dangerous. Well, now I'm really dangerous because I have Cursor and I have Claude Code, and I can really build stuff that actually works and push it live. And I think that's only going to get better. I think all of us are kind of merging in many ways to be generalists, and you'll still have your area of expertise, but just the way this gives us, like, when it's an assistant and it can help improve your practice, I don't think that's hype. I think that's impact. Next word, or words, AI note takers. This one I just threw in as a personal pet peeve. If you have an AI note taker in all your meetings, like I'm in 100 meetings a day, and sometimes there's more AI note takers in the meeting than humans. So like if you're one of those people with one of those that auto adds to your meeting, your coworkers are probably just being kind by not telling you to please stop. The real reason I think these are more hype is because who's reading those notes, right? Are we really going back and using them and expecting them to be a good source of truth? There are some examples where this is more impact. I do use granola. It's not a pitch for granola, but the thing I like about it is before it spits out the notes, I give it my notes from the meeting. As the meeting's going on, I type in the notes. I say, these are the important pieces. This is what I want to remember. This is my to-do. Then it incorporates that as the major piece, and it fills out the rest of the notes around it. So it's being that assistant there. It's not replacing. And that's a theme that I think we're going to see more and more. Next one. All the AI app builders. Hype. Well, it's kind of weird because I work on an AI website builder. And is it hype? Is it impact? I heard a lot of hype. I tend to agree that most of them, the way that they are currently working today, is a whole lot of hype. And that's because if you actually use them, you go and you look at the code, you realize that a month later, 6 months later, dependencies, things are going to break. Who knows what kind of spaghetti nonsense is being built under the hood. That is going to get better and better. And then you have the other kind of end of the spectrum, which is what we're doing with our WordPress AI builder, which is we're not creating any code in the building process. WordPress, open source project, the beautiful thing about WordPress and any open source project is that's what the LLMs have been trained on from the beginning, because all that code's open and public in GitHub, which is pretty good. And so we don't even have to give it a lot of context. You can go right into pick your favorite LLM and just say, spit me out like Markdown for the WordPress block editor for this page, and it does it, and it's pretty nice. But we're not writing code for that. We're setting options in the database, or we're remembering different design choices that the user is asking for in the theme. And so it's different than the app builder approach. And I kind of think we're going to reach a middle point over time. We're also experimenting with some code generation of plugins and blocks and things. And as they get a little safer, a little bit more stable, there'll be a time when you really need it to generate something for you so you can work with it. But having that foundation of the platform that is open source and that you can build on top of, we have blocks, we have design language, all of the things that the LLMs can really use to build off of, that's better than a lot of the app builders that are out there. Now, they are also creating their own design language, or they're picking some tools to build from. But just as it is today, they're really great for prototyping, for experimenting, for coming up with something quick, but not something you're probably putting in the enterprise anytime super soon. How are we at time? All right, next word. Well, 2 words. Observability and evals. These, anybody? Hype, impact? Yeah, these are the buzzwords of just the last month or two, if you listen to all the podcasts, watch all the YouTubes, and for really good reason. So if you take anything away from today, this is the area that I'm spending all of my time on, pretty much, within our product, is figuring out with all of the interactions that our users are taking with AI tools, just the product in general. Observability is monitoring, so it's kind of analytics of what the AI is actually doing, what it's thinking. And evals is then taking that and testing the output to see if it did what it said it was going to do or did what you expected it to do. And I guess I can tell a little story. What is it, a few months ago, GPT-5 came out, right? And like any good product manager, you're like, oh, it's the next newest model, let's just switch over. We were using 4.1 for our tools. It's newer, it's cheaper, it's faster, it's going to give better results. Well, we had evals in place, and we knew immediately before pushing it live that the experience just degraded. The output was worse, it was much slower, it was costing us a lot more, and there's kind of somewhat of a funny story behind it. And we built it for 4.1. 4.1 is not a thinking, not a reasoning model. And so in all of our prompts, we were saying, hey, ChatGPT, remember to think here. Go and think about this. Well then, in 5, it does that without you telling it to do that. So it was thinking twice on every time, every interaction. It was thinking when we told it to think, and then it was thinking again because it's a reasoning model. And I don't really know the order, which one was going first. But the output, the result was from this newer, faster, better model that your product manager says you should just switch to is worse. And we wouldn't have known that if we wouldn't have put in all of the work in having our evals in place and monitoring what folks were actually doing. So all this to say that this is the theme of the day, that AI in and of itself is a lot of hype. There is so much hype out there. But AI with the human, that's when we're going to get the impact, and that's where we're seeing the impact. We have an annoying phrase, human in the loop, and that's what it is, right? And so that's everything from your note takers in meetings to the developer developing product to the content creator creating blog posts or images or videos on Sora. It's the human, really, that is still in control, that really can put in their own personality and define what it is that they're trying to build. So I think I went through it really quickly. This is building the web we want, which the whole point is we want it to be human-centric first, the humans building it, not all the agents, and that we have a long way to go to really get to the impact that we expect from this. You can play with our builder just to see what I'm talking about at wordpress.com/AI. But this, again, was informal. I would love to just riff on any topics that piqued your interest if you have any questions. Yeah?
There was a slide on observability, right? So what's your commentary on that? How can we have observability like AI does?
Yeah. So the question, just so everybody can hear, is go back to the slide on observability and any tips or any thoughts on how we can make sure that we're implementing this. So for us, it's kind of a product, a lot of work you choose. I think I've seen several sponsors here that have some tools for observability. We're using LangFuse at the moment, and all of the interactions with the AI get fed into LangFuse as a trace. And the trace is the interaction, basically like a chat transcript of what the user inputs, but where the value is, we're telling the AI to share its thinking with us, not with the user necessarily, but in the trace, like this is the tool I called, this is the summary that I've made, this is what I think I'm supposed to do, this is what I've done. And then it's a matter of going through them all. And then here's another thing that I had a slide for, actually, and then I took it out, so I'll tell the little story. Going along the theme of AI plus humans is where the real impact is. What I see all the time in teams I work with and just demos on YouTube or whatever is people think, all right, LLMs are really good at taking this data and summarizing it, so I'm just going to export from LangFuse all of these traces, and I'm just going to throw it at an LLM, and it's going to tell me what their main pain points are, and it's going to tell me what I should do next, right? And that's a good idea. I've fallen for that many times. But there is a way, if you actually go through the lengthy process of getting much better value out of that LLM interaction when doing that. And so I can describe that briefly, or at least our practice is we export all of those, and maybe it's 1,000 traces or whatever it is, and the human, who knows best, goes through first and reads as many as it takes in order to get a good idea of common trends, however you want to tag, if you want to tag it, or like, this is the problem they're hitting, or whatever it is. And so the big question is, well, how many do I have to read? The best advice I've ever heard is you keep reading until you can't predict what the next outcome's going to be, until you're seeing the pattern. So maybe it's 50, maybe it's 100, maybe it's 500, depending on what it is. But you are the one making the categories. You are the one saying, I see that, in our case, just this trace is a customer who's not getting the fonts that they want. This is a customer that's not getting the colors that they want. This is a customer not getting the copy or the content that they want. And then once I have those categories, and I've defined the categories, how it makes sense for my product, then I can upload the rest of them to the LLM and say, can you assign each of these traces to the closest category that matches? That gives you a whole different level of just validation behind what you're doing, and you know, like, you're going to get really good outcomes that way. So this works for like user interviews, surveys, anything where you're trying to categorize or look for trends. The human needs to find those trends first, predict what they are, put them through. Of course, you can run the whole thing once if it doesn't cost you too much and like get an idea of maybe some of them, but you'll find if you do that, when you do it as a human, you're going to get different results. And so that's just some advice, I guess. Anything else? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is one that our engineering teams are really just starting to go back and implement, like, at a whole higher level. The first builds is kind of the thing that gets skipped. It's kind of like unit testing or something, like, it's nice, but we sometimes just kind of leave out of the process. I would say, first of all, we try to keep them super simple. It's a pass-fail, 0 or 1 kind of result. I would also say that it does much better in the evals when you give it examples. This is something I didn't believe, just because we're all making this up. I didn't realize that if I was super explicit in the eval, this is an example of when the customer is not happy with the colors that they're getting. This is an example of when the customer is happy of the colors that they're getting. That just improves the evals, like, output. It's much more accurate that way. If you give it 2 or 3 examples, it doesn't take a whole bunch. You don't want to, like, blow up your context window. But that's one thing that we're trying to implement in the evals, is just adding 2 or 3 examples to each one to really help the LLM judge. And in LangFuse that we use, there's even a thing called LLM as a judge, which is pretty handy to write these. Yeah, so the question is, for evals, are they automated or are they manual? It can be both. So we have automated evals for, like, just almost more like unit testing. Does things break? Do they work? Do they not? And then there's manual going in and spot checking and training it depends on how complex the interactions are with the users as well, if it can be automated or manual, I would say. Yes, sir. The memory? Sorry. I mean the web we want. Oh, yes. How it promote ethical memory. Ethical memory. And digital justice for the people everywhere. Yeah. Well, our company motto, or one of our 3 goals, is democratizing publishing. A lot of people use the democratizing thing, but that in the web we want, you have access to the tools to create what you want to create, and you can host it anywhere. You can take it with you. With the AI and ethical memory.
Criteria for that, the criteria to comply with the archive, the general.
Yeah, that is something that that is something I worry about, because the more context, the more stuff you throw at the LLMs doesn't necessarily mean the better output that it gives. And so I think a lot of us have had this philosophy of like, let's not delete things from the web, let's keep it there. You have the archives, and that's not great for LLMs if you have a 25-year-old website and you have some really outdated content. How do we give it the information that, I mean, maybe you wanted to search the archives, but maybe you wanted to only show the most recent. I don't know that I have a great answer for you, other than this is an important problem for us to figure out. Yes, sir.
So early in your presentation, you talked about making the world smaller, like all of these websites with these content creators that we use to kind of scroll out a message, like a lot is lost. It's like the telephone game, right?
Yeah.
So you said that you would like to see a future where an individual website, there's a closer link between not necessarily the identity, but the real message of the creator and the content that they're seeing. So what do you see as the path to making that, to cutting out all those middlemen and just getting to a real truth?
Yeah, so the question is around, if I can paraphrase, how can we get to one of the things that I talked about, having more local, more niche, more authenticity around websites, and empowering that creator to kind of own their content and own that space. And it's no fun building something or creating content if no one's going to come read it and find it, right? And that's why those big platforms are so successful, because that's where it sends you the eyeballs, sends you the traffic. And that is something we've definitely got to figure out. I think this being a shift where people are going to start turning to their LLM of choice or their search tool, this is a new opportunity. For a while, a lot of people still go to YouTube first for if they want a product review, or if they want to, you're searching for a vacation and you kind of want to know like what that city looks like, or some reviews or something. We go to YouTube to search. Maybe that paradigm's going to change, and it's going to be, we start in the LLMs. And I don't know how it's going to play out. I suspect there's going to be some of these frontier models and these big AI companies that are going to be really pay to play to be at the top of these search results, and a whole nother way of ads that are not necessarily targeted but are more on the content or on the topics. And I think there's going to then be room for other alternatives to pop up, to be, this is the place that is more the open web, and we're going to have an algorithm that's public and open source and transparent. And it's going to just be, the market's going to have to win out, right? And ultimately, I don't think most users care, sadly. So it's going to have to be who has the best user experience, who has the best end results, and drives people to what they're looking for. That worries me a bit, except maybe if it's pay to play and you're always getting the same like Expedia result. And I only dropped that because they're like one of the first launches in I don't remember if it's ChatGPT or Claude recently, on bringing their cards directly in. Maybe it's Perplexity. I shouldn't spread rumors, but it's a good question, but I think we need to figure out. It's the top of the funnel. It's driving eyeballs to those pages. That's the trick, and yeah, we've got to figure that out.
Probably just an extension of this thought, but in order to have like a leaner, more efficient, maybe personalized content, we also have to think about how do we identify fake, generated arts or videos, pictures, content.
Yeah.
What are you all doing about that on the web?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know that we're ever going to have a great way of identifying the fraud or that completely AI-generated stuff. What I'm thinking the alternative is going to be we're going to have trusted, verified sources for created, like human created, or at least human assisted, highly assisted content, and kind of flip it and go the other way. And through, I mean, it's kind of the same way that it's been. We'll probably all have different sources that we trust and don't trust. And that's just, it's going to be an interesting, I'm not too worried about, there's going to be lots of examples of deep fakes and things that are just created that are totally false that people are going to fall for and fraud. I am worried about that. But I think we're going to, it's just going to be so much noise that we'll figure out what rises to the top somehow. I don't know, it's wishful thinking maybe. Yes?
Really a very far-fetched thought, but nowadays cookies are not being used a lot because of disadvantage. So stateless tracking with the fingerprinting happens. So when search happens through an LLM, how do websites see it as? Like, are they still considering the fingerprint generated by the LLM, by the machines which are running? Does the content get biased due to that?
I think I'm having a hard time hearing, but I know you asked about cookies and that's being used less. And so when search happens through the LLMs, how does that translate to like how we're...
Generally, the fingerprinting happens on our machines when we are searching directly. So when the content, when the search is happening through the LLM, do the website see that fingerprint and then start biasing content towards?
Yeah. I mean, I think personalization of content is both like a blessing and a curse of we should be able to write content on the fly on a website that's like tailored to, it knows that I like tennis and I don't know what else, I live in Texas, and the examples written on a sales page could be written directly to me. The challenge with that will be how do LLMs like save that content to like send you to the top level of the interaction. I think we'll see more of those personalized experiences like outside of sales landing pages or marketing pages and more like inside the product once you're kind of in. And then you'll probably be logged in and then they'll be able to track you and fingerprint you anyway probably. At least in the short term. That's kind of how I see it. All right, well this has been fun. Thanks for having lunch with us. And I will be standing outside at the Automatic booth right outside these doors for the afternoon if you want to say hello. Thanks.